Huh? And we are live. Hello, good morning, good day. Thanks for joining us again. It's another Super Galactic Saturday, and I'm Jerry Senior with Jerry Junior.
Good morning.
And it's a interesting morning. It was very, very, very foggy this morning. like
Yeah, it's
what's
true.
the saying? It was as thick as pea soup, right?
It was foggy
And
yesterday too.
yeah, it was, but today it lasted a lot longer, a lot later. So it was kind of interesting. It's finally clearing up, at least over here. I think at the beach it might still be a little bit hazy or whatever. Um, During my bike ride this morning, it was very, very cold and very, very foggy. So it's kind of crazy. But welcome once again, and thanks for joining us. If you're joining us live, and if you're watching the recording, thanks for watching. We appreciate your support. We appreciate your interest, and yeah, thanks for joining us. Good morning to you, Rosmaine. It's good to see you again. Thanks for joining us, my friend. Always happy to have you. And today we're going to talk about a few things. We're going to talk about some indie books. We're going to talk about some indie artists, and maybe a couple of controversial things that kind of caught our attention this week. So, you want to kick it off? I know you wanted to talk about something.
Yeah, well, I wanted to actually, promote some more indie stuff, and
Yeah,
also just talk about some of the stuff that I got from Comic Con because I ended up buying a lot of books from Comic Con more than I
yeah,
care to admit, but that's
yeah, yeah.
fine.
It's true.
I'm gonna end up admitting them over the course of these podcasts. Um, yeah, we met a lot of cool creatives at the con, obviously, and I was able to get started on reading some of the books. So I want to just talk about some of the books that I've read so far, sort of give my thoughts and feedback and whatnot. Just sort of a mini review. So take it with a grain of salt.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
if I seem critical, I'm a lot more critical to myself. So don't take it too personally. But yeah. One of the first creatives that I met at the con was the creator of a book called Lightning Strikes, written by Marcus D. Newsom. So he was really cool to talk to. He had a booth with, I'm assuming, was his nephew or son.
Well,
Um,
I thought it was his brother, like his little brother or something.
yeah, so okay, yeah, that makes more sense.
Yeah,
they
I
had
think it was
they
his.
kind of they kind of had that Sonic Tails dynamic.
Yeah, they
Which,
did
which,
actually. They were
which
pretty
is
cool.
yeah, it's a compliment. Don't worry.
Yeah, yeah, they worked well together. Like,
Yeah, yeah.
it was pretty cool talking to him.
Personality wise, all that stuff. Let me
Yeah,
actually show off some of his artwork because it's really cool. But there we go. But yeah, Marcus is the artist and author of a book called A Lightning Strike, and right off the bat, really enjoyed the just to start with the stuff that I did like. Really enjoyed the art style. Marcus is a really great artist.
yeah,
Um,
yeah. And his book was beautiful. He had giant size sketchbook on the
oh yeah,
table, and yeah, it was really cool stuff. Like really nice looking. He
that's
had
him
some
right there.
panel stuff. Yeah, it's really cool. So yeah, that was actually one of the pages. Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, he's a really great illustrator, and you know, and he was really cool to talk to. We share a lot of the same interests, so it was cool to connect with him.
Yeah,
He actually
really
did
nice.
some. I mentioned it before. Big Sonic fan. He actually did some really cool Archie Sonic based stuff that he got to show off at Comic Con.
Yeah,
That was really awesome. So just wanted to take a minute to shout out to Marcus, shout out his page, shout out some of the stuff he's doing in the community. Uh, he's a really great illustrator. He has told me about how he's taught at school and stuff like that. And he's from Compton, so his whole thing is
yeah, that's right.
giving back to his community, which is
Yeah,
all stuff.
yeah, it is. It's very cool.
Yeah. So really cool dude. So Marcus, I'll take this personally. In all seriousness, though, his actual book, getting to his actual book, um, Lightning Strike is about, as he claims, Compton's first superhero, and he gets as a kid that gets struck by lightning, and he ends up getting electric powers, and he being able to also the extra power of what it seems like being able to read like tagging and graffiti like hieroglyphs. That is something I noticed in the book is that there's a big he sort of we talked about it too. He sort of made the connection that graffiti tagging stuff like that is sort of the modern version of.
Yeah, yeah, I've heard that before, and it's actually an interesting concept.
Yeah. So as
Yeah,
someone who's I live in LA, there's a lot of tagging, there's a lot of murals out here.
yeah,
Some
and
good,
to be
some bad.
fair, yeah, I love graffiti art. I grew up with a lot of friends who were graffiti artists and friends who were taggers.
Yeah.
I always make the differentiation between tagging and graffiti art because a lot of people conflate the two, and they're not really the same.
I
Like
agree.
you can tag something and use that graffiti art style
Yeah.
to paint your tag on a building, right?
Yeah.
But graffiti art, it's not just tagging, right? It really is an art form. It's a visual style, and and it's actually quite beautiful when it's done properly, and and yeah, with permission from the property owner, right?
Yeah.
Ideally, so and tagging is like, well, I'm just gonna put my mark wherever I can, right? That's the goal of tagging. It's sometimes it's territorial, sometimes it's just doing it just to do it, right? To kind of be anti-establishment, and both have that impression of anti-establishment, of course, but they are different from each other in that sense. They're not exactly the same, you know. So I
Mhm.
just want to point that out because I'm a fan of it myself, So of graffiti art. So
Yeah. And
and clearly
just
he
to
is. So, yeah.
oh yeah, just real quick, just to get to Rosemary's interesting question. Did either of you know Chaka? You talking about Chaka Khan?
No,
'Cause-
he's talking about. I think that's a tagger or something. Or
Oh,
I've heard that before.
well,
That
there's
name.
the answer to your question.
I've heard it. I've heard that before. I'm trying to recall because wasn't that person like?
Chaka is the
Oh,
legendary
oh,
Chaka the Tag is the legendary Los Angeles graffiti writer.
yeah, he was kind of all over the place for a time. Like they were. It was like in the news, I think.
I have seen this before,
That's like a
actually.
long
Okay.
time ago, I think.
Yeah, okay.
So yeah.
Interesting.
So yeah, I've heard. I knew I recognized that. Yeah, thanks, Rosman. Yeah, like
Uh,
yeah, it's yeah, that was a controversial, you know, kind of doing the Banksy but tagging, right, like type of stuff. So.
well, now you know how hip and cool I am versus my dad. So, anyways, uh,
Right.
uh, uh, but I do. I have seen a lot of. I've seen a lot of different, mediums, whether it be movies or comics or whatever, handle tagging to various degrees of authenticity. Because some people, they'll tag. They're like in comics or like movies, their tag is like just you know the word dope or cool but written weird, or it'll be like down with school, or something like that. You know,
Yeah, yeah,
so
that's
it's
the yeah,
that. You know what I'm saying.
yeah, that's the basic. Yeah, yeah. I mean, it's like I said, it's
I,
uh,
I, I say that to say,
Rosman, he says
yeah, yeah, I
you're
get that,
still in short.
but I say that to say that I really enjoy the authenticity of the graffiti art that is on display in the book. I think it's really good.
Yeah, that's the thing. It looks like he used like actual
Yeah,
graffiti art, like like he literally just took photos and laid them out into the comic. So it's kind of cool. It actually looks,
Oh yeah,
has an interesting like texture, especially for a comic book. Yeah.
yeah. Like the only other medium that I would say does the whole graffiti tagging style really good that I can think of in recent memory is the new Street Fighter Six. Anybody
Mhm.
Street Fighter Six? A lot of graffiti art and tagging aesthetic is they've implemented into the game's art direction and also like some gameplay elements as well. Whenever you use the drive impact system, there's like a big splash of like graffiti paint and stuff like that. It's actually pretty cool. So some and there's a little ninja who fights with spray cans and stuff like that in the game. Her name's Kimberly. She's really cool. So yeah, so it's they definitely go for the more Street Fighter Six has a much more a much more street feel than the previous Street Fighter games, even in comparison to the Third Strike. But so it's nice to see another person, you know, do this really well. Um, and lastly, I also well, not lastly, but I also really want to compliment. Um, so this is actually the actual character's super suit. Um, one of the things that right off the bat, I made the assumption that this was going to be like uh, basically his own take on Static Shock, which isn't inherently bad.
Yeah.
But after seeing his actual suit, I was actually really impressed of how unique he was able to make it look. It's like a cross between like a Ninja Turtle and Spider Man.
Yeah, it definitely has
It
that,
looks
that
awesome.
that feel to it. Yeah.
Yeah, so it looks dope. I really enjoy it. Enjoy the costume. Now, the stuff that I wasn't a fan of um, is mainly just the storytelling, and they don't have any panels on the website, unfortunately. But let me see. Nope. Well, there's now you know how to get the first issue. But yeah, so I have issue one, and my first impression was it was okay, not because the story itself was bad, but because the way the story is told. So comic books, it's a visual medium,
Right.
so you want to be able to find creative ways to convey the story. So when your first page of story is a literally like 2 pages of essay, right? Like literally, I'm looking at this and welcome to the city of Compton, a place where crime is not in sight, only peace and joy running the streets. Hey, hey, psych, which things were that way, but city I know is the total opposite. And it's just text. It's just text. I'm reading a
Yeah.
book. There's no
Yeah.
comic.
It's like panels of text. Yeah.
Yeah, and it's like, oh, okay. I feel like they're.
Yeah.
I
I,
feel like
I
they're, especially considering that part of the big theme of the story is graffiti art. I feel like there's a more creative way to do
yeah,
this.
it's kind of a missed opportunity, right?
Yeah,
Like you can imagine like a huge wall, you know, and this is all kind of tagged out on the wall, you know,
yeah,
and or somehow integrated, like as if it were graffiti on the wall.
hmm
And then you can have a character walking past, kind of glancing at, looking at it, and so you're kind of pulling you into the story, and wow, you're also giving this sort of exposition, right? This intro. So yeah, and it's a missed opportunity. Um, I agree with that because it's very wordy
yeah,
and it's a lot. It's almost it kind of puts me off because I start reading the first two and then I get to the third and I'm like, oh, there's another one. Oh, there's another. And it's kind of like, yeah, where's the action? Where's the you know
yeah,
like something? So yeah, I agree. It's a bit much. After that, it picks up and it's a very the word dark
oh yeah,
comes to
um,
mind.
yeah. It's
Because
great.
it's like I guess it's very urban. It's a night scene, and it looks like a lot of it kind of happens in a very dark or a knight.
Well, yeah. So you get introduced to this guy. He kind of looks like a very Steve Meanerish kind of character, and he gets like arrested. Looks like he's about to be arrested, but he says, "Hey, boys, I'm ready to go home." I don't know if I don't know if he's about to die or if they're actually going to arrest him when he says "go home," but it never gets resolved in this book. So
Yeah,
he just kind of gets arrested. The rest of the book is cool. The football scene is cool. I like the football scene. He's playing. He's got to prove himself. He's about to tackle a guy, but then he gets struck by lightning, and
yeah, that's
teleported
yeah,
into he gets teleported into the into the graffiti dimension.
yeah.
It
I mean,
actually
look,
looks really no. It looks cool. I'm
yeah,
not
it's creative. I mean, it's
it.
like okay,
Yeah, it looks dope. This is actually the best part of This is actually the best part of the book.
yeah, it's something you don't really expect, and you're like, oh, okay,
Yeah.
interesting. So one thing I want to point out, like design wise, it's very beautiful,
Oh
and
yeah.
he makes use of silhouette quite a bit,
Oh
and
yeah.
that's one thing I'm impressed by. It's like he like I said, it's dark, but then there's section like you'll have a whole kind of 2 page spread, and
Hmm.
then there's like a section where it's just light, like a doorway, and there's a figure,
Yeah.
or his character have like this kind of cool white outline against this dark background, and it's actually very cool. It's all throughout the book too, so it's very good
Yeah.
design in that sense.
Visually, it's awesome.
Yeah, visually it's very compelling, and it's very striking. So yeah, it's I kind of like it. I mean, because I'm into I love like that sort of creating high contrast, and it does that pretty well with most of his layout. So
Yeah.
he's
So
got a great eye for that.
one thing he mentioned, I don't know how significant this is, but he points out that the place he's in looks like an abandoned version of the Compton courthouse. So I don't know how relevant that's going to be later in the story,
Yeah, yeah,
but especially considering that there's a big tag that says law versus power. So I'm guessing we'll find out what that's about later. And so the way it ends, I'm not a big fan of, just because it's a lot more exposition. I mean, he talks about I don't know typical hood stuff. You know, they're like, oh, it's gangs and crooked cops, and the city's tough. And I feel like for me personally, I feel like if you want to have like an urban setting, I think the best way to show how I guess tough a city is by actually like watching the city breathe. When I say that, I mean like like allowing things to happen, right? As opposed to like telling us these things happen.
yeah. In other words, maybe he could take the time. Maybe he does this in later issues, but
Hmm.
to take the time to show us some backdrop, like side characters and
Yeah,
just background stuff that's happening. Like if it's somewhere where it's Compton, so there's a lot of it's like a million and one things you can portray. It all depends on what direction you want to go, but and just for the record, I grew up in South Central, so it's like right
yeah,
next door to Compton. So
yeah,
so it's like that's another reason why I like the concept, because it's like it's like it's very kind of right here in our backyard, type of
that's
thing.
true. Yeah,
Yeah, so it's kind of cool. So I see where he's coming from, and it's just like visually, it's really cool. But and the concept is good. So we'll see where it goes. I hope the story just gets more and more intriguing. But
oh yeah.
yeah,
I would have liked to see him put on the suit at least. It kind of ends with him escaping the graffiti dimension.
yeah. But
So
I
like,
think that's the point. I think he's building up to that, and that's the one thing
oh,
I
that's
get
fair.
from it
Yeah,
too. Is he's it's a slow build, right? He's building up to these things, which is nice. That's a nice pacing overall. So Like I said, we'll see where it goes. You got to get the more issues and see where the story goes. So, but yeah, overall, I like it. Definitely some room for improvement, of course, but um, I think it's ambitious and it's and like I said, it's very unique. Like I
Mm.
don't see a lot of comics that really go hard with the graffiti look and everything. So,
No.
and he definitely goes hard. Like it's all throughout the book, and he uses it, and it's literally the backdrop of a lot of panels, right? Because he's in the
Oh
studio
yeah.
and everything. So it's actually really clever and really fun. So, and especially if you like I like graffiti art, so
Yeah.
I don't have a problem with it. So, so if you like graffiti art, definitely check it out.
Yeah. If you hear me snickering, it's not like aha, this is dumb. I mean, my dad knows. I like it's just it's oh I'm laughing because it's over the top, and people
Yeah,
who know me know I like over the top stuff.
it
So
is. He goes hard in the paint,
yeah,
and
yeah, hard to
it
paint.
works.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, it works.
But yeah, it's so far. You know, I would recommend it. Um, I think I think visually it's cool. I like a lot of the visual elements. I hope that he improves the I guess like I said the the way the story is being told could use a bit more work in between, and like the beginning and the ending. The middle was pretty strong, but we'll see what happens.
Yeah, yeah. Excited for this guy. So um, I put up this comment by Ross Main because going back to the Chaka tagger, it's like yeah, they were trying to get him right. They were trying to he was like a wanted criminal or something, right? Like you're bringing back
What?
memories. So
Oh,
I'm
okay.
like, yeah, they were trying to get him. It was like, and I'm not sure why though. Outside of just tag, I think because he was tagging up like unusual places, like billboards and like the freeway signs, stuff like kind of bold places, I suppose. But
I mean,
yeah,
those feel like pretty normal places to tag things. I see that a lot. I mean, I don't.
yeah, I mean, I've seen but I think at the time it was probably very
Oh, really?
unexpected and unusual.
Well, how
So
how
that's
long ago was it?
I don't know, it's 90s, I guess, early I
Oh,
don't know.
okay.
It
Yeah.
was
No,
a while. It was a long time ago. But yeah, we said Chaka. I'm like, yo, I remember that name. Like, yeah, that's a while back. I think I may have been in college still.
Oh,
I think
okay.
that's how far back it goes. Like I said, that's early '90s. So, yeah, yeah, they were after. It was kind of strange because it was like it's a tagger. Like, what's the like outside of just being annoyed at the property damage, right?
Right.
I'm not sure if it warranted like news stories and So yeah, that was kind of a weird time. I got to look that up and find out like the details because yeah, I remember that they were trying to take him down. I don't think they ever did they? I don't think they ever like found him or anything. At least I don't remember. So like I said, it was a long time ago. So, but yeah, thanks for bringing that up, man, because I forgot all about that. That's so funny. So, but moving on, you had something else. Did you
Oh
have
yeah.
another book?
Yeah. So the other book I read is called Punchline and the Vaudevillains. So right off the bat, let me show you. Unfortunately, you didn't get to talk to this guy at Comic Con. I did,
Yeah, yeah.
but yeah, this is a Punchline and the Vaudevillains. So that's the author um,
All right, looks
on the
nice.
video. Yeah. So just for some context, he's actually another one of the first guys I met. Ted Sakura. Um, he basically, and he kind of sums it up in the book as well. He wanted to make comics, and then he wanted to make movies. Then he wanted to make musical. He has a musical. He has a theater background, which explains
Yeah,
a lot
that
of
kind of
the.
explains the title, right?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
That's
Really, really cool dude. I really like the I don't know, because one of the first stories that I wrote in like high school involved the circus and clowns, so
Yeah.
a little bit biased. But I do think it's a cool concept. Um, Basically, it's like this. They're this team uh, of like a band of thieves that also run a circus. Um, there's two characters that are very prominent in the story. Is one is the tap dance killer, which is, let me see, let me pull her up back up. Yeah, right here. This was actually the first character design I saw at his booth,
Yeah.
and the cover. Let me see if I can find the cover. The cover is really cool just because of the Two Face thing. Let me see if I could find. Also, yeah, you're right. There is a couple of characters. There is another comic book character named Punchline um, in a DC Comics. I guess
Oh,
so.
interesting.
I guess I haven't read any of the comic, but from what little I know, I guess she was supposed to replace Harley Quinn, since
Oh,
you
that
know
brings back. Okay. Yeah.
Harley Quinn is she's considered an anti-hero now, so they had to come up with a new character to replace Harley Quinn. And her name's Punchline. She didn't look as cool as this though. This looks a lot cooler.
That's cool. It's nice artwork.
Yeah. So yeah, she's an actress. She was cast in a horror show musical, and she got too enveloped in the role, and then she became a literal uh, like assassin slash serial killer. So it's almost like uh, what's the guy from The Dark Knight? Um,
Joker.
yeah, well, the method acting gone wrong kind of thing. That's her character.
She got pulled into to the part a little too much,
Yeah,
like Tropic Thunder.
yeah, yeah, exactly.
I'm the dude dressed as a dude as a dummy.
Yeah. Except now she's a criminal. So right off the bat, way cooler concept. So I really like this character.
Okay.
Punchline is the other character that's prominent in this book. He is he's a boxer who was hired by the vaudevillains to be like their muscle and their hitman and stuff like that. And he's pretty cool. I kind of wish the book, the way I have issue with a punchline, and I kind of wish the book kind of started off with his story, because it starts off introducing uh, um, the vaudevillains, and I guess the way they're introduced is a little weird because it's well, it's basically what ends up happening is the tap dance killer kidnaps her her father, and she takes him to like their underground lair or whatever. And then the dad finds out that A, her daughter's a criminal, but also B, the mom apparently in the other book, her mom was she like died at some point and was brought back to life via some voodoo, and but as a result she's lost her mind and stuff.
Hmm.
Uh, pretty nuts, pretty
Like
cool. Or
Pet Cemetery.
I don't know about cool. It's kind of crazy, but it's just it's just I get introduced. I'm expecting to learn more about Punchline, and instead I get you know sort of this really crazy backdrop to this other character.
Yeah.
And although I think we end up finding out later that uh, Punchline and let me see, Punchline and uh, the tap dance killer are siblings. So that's
Okay.
interesting.
Fascinating. So, do you know how many issues are available so far?
So right now, I mean, based off the website, Punchline is on issue 3,
Okay.
and Tap Dance Killer is what's it, one? I mean, I see a lot of one. It's like five issues.
Oh, so it's planning to jump
Yeah.
into. Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Cool.
And and we also get introduced to one more character. Do you remember, Dad? Do you remember the ghost, the or not the ghost, the phantom with the strength of 10 tigers?
Oh yeah, of course.
Yeah. So there's a character like that in this book,
Oh really?
although a lot cooler because he actually
Cooler than the Phantom? I don't know.
dad stop.
The
But
Phantom's dope, man. What are you talking about? The Phantom is awesome.
the guy in a purple suit. No, he's like this
No,
jungle
the
man.
Phantom is dope. Period.
Anyways, he's like this. He's like this dude who like taps into the power of this ancient animal called the Apama, and so he gets like animal strength and reflexes, and he could talk to animals. Like there's a scene where he's
Oh,
talking
so
to a
like,
bird.
what's his name? Is it Animal Man in DC?
I
Another
think it's
DC
I think his
character.
name is literally Animal Man.
Yeah.
Although Apama is a little cooler. I also do like his
Then
design.
Animal Man.
Yes. Well, I mean, it's a cooler name than Animal Man.
I suppose. I don't know.
But no, Apollo's cool. So far, he when we're introduced to him, the way he's introduced, I know you don't have the book, but the way we're introduced to him in the story, he runs an ice cream truck, like as his civilian job,
Right.
and I guess some kids were trying to prank him, and they try to egg his truck, and he ends up catching the egg and like tossing it back at the kid, and then the kid's friend laughs at him, and so the ice cream dude he tosses ice cream at the other kid's face. So it's he's kind of a jerk.
Yeah, it sounds like it.
But
Well, you
but
don't
yeah.
take no mess from no kids. That's what it is. Right?
I mean, yeah, no, be fair. But yeah, so he seems pretty cool. He seems kind of strong, scrawny. I'm not gonna lie, but outside of that, I do like his design. Um, so it seems like this book introduces a lot of previously established characters before we actually get to Punchline. Although I kind of wish it was the other way around, but I don't think it's a big deal. Punchline himself um, seems pretty cool. He seems pretty, even though obviously he's a hitman. He seems pretty down to earth. He's a lyricist. When we finally get you know introduced to him, he's like working out. We see him working out, but we also see him like writing like I'm guessing it's like poetry and stuff like that. So he seems pretty chill. At least until he puts on the clown makeup and starts punching people to death.
Beating people up. Yeah.
Yeah.
That sounds like another DC. And the like the animal. It's not Animal Man. I was thinking of. It's man. He was in Justice League Unlimited, the animated series. Anybody
Oh,
remember it? Help me out. I can't think of his name for some reason. Um, man, what was his name? Um,
there's actually
they,
another
they
person.
featured him in an episode of Batman Brave and the Bold
I
too.
want to. I want to say I know who you're talking about. You talking
He
about
was
Vixen?
dope.
Or
Who?
no? You're talking about
Vixen, no. Although it's a similar power.
yeah.
It's Vixen, yeah. But no, it's you don't remember that episode in Brave and the Bold where he there the I don't know who it was some alien or something was zapping his animal powers, and then the metal men had to fight him because they were using his powers to power some giant creature or something.
Oh,
Man, what was his name? It was an awesome episode. I love that episode. Batman Brave and the Bold was, just as a side. One of my favorite series.
Oh yeah, that's what I said. Buana Beast. Yeah, you're right. Buana
Yeah,
Beast.
that's it. Yeah, that's it.
I
Thank you,
I knew
thank you.
you. I
That was me
almost
to the
I
rescue
was
once
gonna get
again.
his name wrong.
Yeah, that's it. Well, yeah, he's awesome. I'm sorry, but he's
Yeah,
awesome.
yeah.
Like
But
he might be a
so
little cheesy, but he's awesome. But
yeah,
so yeah, it sounds like he's doing a kind of a riff of a lot of the uh, DC heroes and villains, and kind of doing his added his own twists, which is cool. I mean,
yeah. I mean, so
it looks
far I
interesting
feel
because
like
it's like this self-contained, and it's a common theme like circus, that like
yeah,
vaudeville entertainment. So that could be interesting. That's
yeah.
very that sounds very compelling. So
So it looks like the way the dynamic is Punchline is more of a anti-hero, and Apama is more of a straightforward like vigilante superhero. Like he's sort of a Spider-Man type of guy.
yeah,
Because the way the comic ends up concluding is Punchline breaks into a basically an underground gambling ring where there's like human trafficking taking place, and he just starts killing people, and obviously we assuming all these people are corrupt because they're participating in this human trafficking gambling ring, and he ends up breaking into the safe, and there's like people tied up. But the way the comic ends is that it hints at like there's going to be a confrontation between Apama and Punchline because Apama thinks that Punchline is a villain. So they're gonna this is issue one, so they're probably gonna end up fighting in well issue two. I mean, we're looking at the cover right now, but yeah. So I'm looking forward to that. So overall, like I said, I like the character designs. One of the things that I really appreciate is because it's a hard task is making really striking characters. Um, right off the bat, my favorite character design is the Tap Dance Killer. Uh, only 'cause that was the first character that caught my attention, and then Punchline, and then uh, Apama. I like Apama as a character. Um, his design hasn't grown on me yet. There are aspects that I like about it. There are aspects that are a little weird. Like I like how his hair sort of like his dreads sort of resemble a lion's mane almost, but then like it also looks like he's wearing like a sack over his head sometimes, which is a little weird.
yeah, yeah, just a little.
Yeah, I don't know if that's intentional or not. Maybe it is. Maybe it's not. I'm guessing it is. But yeah, his design will probably take me a while to get used to. But punchlines is cool, and uh, the tap dance killer is really cool. I like the when it comes to like the circus aesthetic. I like the the what's the one I'm looking for? I like the alternating color patterns and stuff like that. So really cool stuff. Very Bronze Age
Yeah,
type of
for sure.
comic.
Yeah,
And yes, oh yeah, there we go. The Savage Scarecrow. That's what he looks like. So I'm excited to see where this goes. And yeah, another highly recommend.
awesome,
Yeah,
awesome. Love it. Very cool.
yeah. So pretty excited for this one.
Now, there was something else you brought to my attention as well. And this is in the gaming space, right? And you want to talk about that? Or you want to talk about the faith one, faith based? Let's talk about the faith based one first,
All right.
because that's an interesting topic to me. Because it's almost like the inverse of a lot of what um, sort of the current day complaints about current day entertainment, right?
Well, I mean, it really boils down to something that we've already been discussing in general. Is and I say this all the time: is people. I mean, people are going to naturally uh, insert they're going to insert their worldview or whatever into their stories because that's just how people are. Whenever you make a choice, you are actively exercising your your worldview, right?
Well,
Um,
sure. I mean,
but
but
like I
not
think
necessarily though, right? Because, and this is why I say that, because a lot of times it's not just our worldview, but sometimes a writer will give you an impression of a worldview, right? In other words, they're
sure,
giving you their take on what that they perceive as this type of worldview, right? And therefore, I'm pouring that into this. Like a good example is Ron Swanson, right? In Parks and Rec, right? I don't know if anybody's familiar with
oh
that
yeah,
show.
no, I get what you're
It's a
saying. Yeah,
funny show, but he was what those writers and producers pictured as a libertarian, right? And of course, he was this extreme example, exaggerated, right? And but to us, he's exaggerated and extreme, right? Or at least to a general audience, and to them, he was. But to an actual libertarian person, it's like, well, he's absolutely right, right? Like a lot of
yeah,
his comments were like, yeah, he's right. Like what he's saying is actually factually correct. But in the context of the show, it's painted as if he's just extreme, crazy, off the cuff type of, and that's what I'm saying. They painted a picture of what they believe is a libertarian person, right? And almost accidentally created sort of the perfect iconography.
sure. But
that
what I'm
generally
getting
people-
at is that he still works because a lot of the stories in Parks and Recs, the story that is good. Like they're funny.
yeah, the stories are good, and I'm just saying that a writer doesn't necessarily have to write their worldview. They
I mean,
can
that's true.
write
Yeah,
from a
yeah,
different perspective as well. Like
sure.
you're not bound to write like in this particular context. We're speaking in relation to Christians who write films, etc., or TV shows, and sort of what's called faith based filmmaking or faith based productions, right? And it's like. And it's an interesting video by his name is Ryder the Omniscient, um, on YouTube. Very made some interesting points about you know fine, make a faith based movie, but don't make a faith based movie. In other words, your movie can have elements of your faith in it, right? It can have representations of your faith in it. It can have topics and subject matter, etc. But don't be ham fisted, right? It doesn't have to exactly be this sort of tropey, so just believe, brother, pray, let's pray, and then a miracle happens, right? Like
Yeah.
it
Well, it's
doesn't
not.
have to be so on the nose, and that's the gist of his point he was making, basically, at least from my vantage point, what I heard. It's like, and I kind of agree because it's sort of the inverse of what we're saying about the message, right, being in everything, and like we just mentioned it this morning, uh, Arcane and um, Vox Machina, right? Like they're both very irreverent, shows that have strong, LGBTQ whatever characters in it, right? And but for some reason, right, quote unquote, air quotes, they work. They're widely popular. And general audiences like it, right? Why? Well, I think because despite it having what some would call woke in it, right? They're like you just said, they're telling a good story with these characters, right? With these characters that represent certain groups, right? And that's the gist. It's like they're not preaching at you about what those characters are, right? If they have a like in Arcane, one of the leads is a LGBTQ character. They're not preaching to you about that. They're saying here's a character going through these challenges, right? And they happen to be LGBTQ, right? Like that's what the difference is. And he's making the same point on the inverse with faith based productions, right? It's like, sure, you can make this safe movie about prayer, right, or whatever, whatever, God intervening and all this kind of stuff. And okay, it's, it becomes kind of vanilla over time. And
Which
one of the key
yeah,
points he made was that not only is it kind of vanilla, but then it also becomes more and more sort of emasculated, right, in the sense that you're not really delving into challenging topics, right? You're not really delving into things that would be, controversial, right?
right. But a lot of it has to do with, I mean, a lot of the same issues we've been having with like more mainstream stuff, where they're trying to get their message across at the sacrifice of a proper
Of the story. Yeah.
well, not just yeah story, but also proper character arcs and things like that.
Yeah. Well, I
So
mean,
it,
that's
it
the story. That's, yeah.
yeah,
Yeah, exactly. And that's the part that it's like, what do you say, put the cart before the horse,
yeah,
right? You're saying, you know, Jesus loves you, Jesus loves you, Jesus loves you, Jesus loves you, right? All throughout the movie. And it's like, all right, Jesus loves you, but even Jesus told us stories, right? He didn't
well,
walk
yeah,
around and just say God loves you, God loves you, God, right? He told us parables to explain the nature of God and the will of God, and the purpose of, his purpose, etc. Like he explained all those things through parables, right? And that helped the people then who were around him and us today, right, through Scripture, to understand what he means and what he's saying and why, right?
yeah,
The who, what, and the why, and the how, right? All through parables.
yeah.
And that's kind of the point he was making, and I agree. Is it's like, what are we doing when we're so ham-fisted and on the nose, right? And we're not engaging the audience and even challenging them, right? With, maybe uncomfortable, especially when you're talking about Christian ethics, etc. Now it's like you're getting into areas where the rubber meets the road. And are you challenging your viewers and your audience, you know, with this story? Are you telling a compelling story that makes someone go, "Whoa," right? Like, or man, that made me really think, or and a lot of times, when you look at the general market for faith-based films, it starts to get kind of redundant and generic, right? And that was sort of the criticism he was levying, and I think he has a good point. I think he's right. You know,
So one of the there's a manga. This isn't a movie, but it's a manga that a friend of mine had introduced me to, called The Horizon, and
the Horizon.
yeah, The Horizon,
Okay.
and it's supposed to be this post-apocalyptic kind of story about uh, this this young boy, and he's he and this friend that he meets is a girl. They're trying to survive, the aftermath of this war. And the boy, his mom just died, and there's a lot of biblical themes in it. But one of the but it's a very depressing story at first, because the boy has to watch a lot of people die, and eventually the friend that he makes, the girl, she ends up dying too,
Hmm.
and he loses all faith in himself, and he thinks life isn't worth living, and God has abandoned him and things like that. But at the end of the story, though, towards the end of the story, he's an adult, and he sees this couple, and he ends up uh, just to sort of paraphrase everything, he ends up saving a person's life, right? Because he didn't want to. He wanted to, break the cycle of people dying, and so he ends up saving this person's life who's drowning, and like when that happens, like the first, like we get like the first colored panels in the story, and one of the more striking images is when he's coming out of the water. A hand helps him up, and the hand has a hole in it, right? Like something pierced through the hand.
Right.
right? It lifts him out of the water, right? So it isn't so it's like it isn't until he his selfless act, right, that he actually finds meaning and hope within himself, right? And he
Yeah.
allows Christ to say. So it was a really cool like way to convey that, right? And it wasn't ham fisted, and it wasn't just it you had to go through this. It's like American Tail. You had to go through all this suffering to
Well,
get
yeah,
to
it makes
the
me think of Ben Hur. I think that's one of the more classic, epic stories that featured Christ without featuring Christ.
I should probably watch that. I hear a lot
Listen,
about Ben Hur.
listen. I already had your brother watch it. You need to watch it. It's
Did
an
he
epic
like it?
movie. Yeah.
Okay.
Listen, Ben Hur is one of the premier uh, classic movies. It's a brilliant movie. I love it. Um, it's well produced. It's just it fires on all cylinders, and it tells a story of forgiveness, redemption, even revenge,
Mm,
right? They expect, and it does it so well, right? And it still weaves in the gospel and salvation, and that's
mm.
what's so brilliant about that movie. Is that it still managed to weave in. This is classic Hollywood,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Because during the time you had the censorship board and all that, so they kind of leaned into the biblical movies and biblical tales. Because that wasn't the first production; it was many before that. But this was part of the most, I guess, most successful, I think, production of Ben Hur. But in any case, I think that's a good example of what we're saying. It's like they managed to tell this epic story of on levels of like Ulysses' voyage, right? Where
Yeah.
this guy goes from prominence to failure to slavery to war to to back to prominence again, and eventually meets an old rival that betrayed him years before, and now he gets to sort of get this revenge, but you know it's not a direct revenge, right? It's not him literally taking his life. It's him, you know, besting him at this, it's a chariot races, right? And his life gets taken in the process. And but it's epic, it's poetic, it's beautiful, and it's like, and you still get this message of hope, of redemption, of forgiveness, etc. Love, of course, and like I said, the story of Christ is woven in there, right? It's there. There's some beautiful scenes, and a lot of those scenes where they feature Christ, they never show his face. That's number one. But two, most I think in all the scenes, there's never words spoken. It's just expression, the expression of emotion and sort of bewilderment or surprise and shock or awe or sorrow, right? In relation to like his execution. And so it's just so well produced, and I think we need to take a lesson from that. Like, how do you tell a story that is faith based without it sort of taking the hammer, you know, like everything's a nail, right? Versus let's weave a story that pulls people in, and it still glorifies God, and it still celebrates good things, beautiful things, without it being preachy and lectury and all that kind of stuff, right? Um, I think that's important, and I think that's a good example. Um, it's that subtlety that really does. And there's, believe it or not, there's a lot of movies that we consider mainstream or secular or whatever. They kind of already do a lot of that if you read into it in the proper context, right? Like The Incredibles, right? It's a great movie about heroes, but it's also a movie about family. You
Yeah.
understand? About an intact nuclear family with a father and a mother, and children and siblings and all that. And it celebrates family. It doesn't denigrate it. The way it starts, you almost think it's going to, right? Because they go through their downfall and all that kind of stuff, but then they come together in the third act, and they as a family, right? And they fight for each other, and they protect each other, and they you understand? And then they celebrate together. And, like there's no cynicism involved in relation to, right? And it's like, that's a great That's a great movie that doesn't hit you over the head with families are important. Families are important. The father's important. Like
Right.
it
Well,
doesn't do that. It just
they
they just show
show
it.
how it is
Yeah,
without.
they just show you that family's important, right? They don't have to hit you over the head. And I think that's we need more stories like that. And it's it's become a classic, right? Like people love it. It is a beautiful movie. But Rosamund says a story is not a boring meeting or lecture, and anyone who's been with people for 5 minutes knows the difference. Yeah, that's facts. It's like you don't want your story to be and I hate meetings.
Yeah, yeah.
What I do for a living, I'm a web designer and developer, and I do a lot of meetings every day, and I do not like them. So yeah, but yeah, you want people. Listen, people go to see your movie, or they read your books, or they engage in your TV shows, etc., to be entertained first and foremost, right? Even if it's a documentary, right? They're engaging with it to be entertained. They're not engaging with it to be lectured, right? Now, there's exceptions, right? Like I said, documentary could be an exception, right? Where someone really is watching just to learn. But for the most part,
But even
even
in a
in that learning,
documentary
yeah, it
requires.
still needs to be delivered in a manner
Yeah.
that's somewhat entertaining, right? Engaging. So yeah, it's like uh, I think sometimes that gets forgotten, even among the faith base, right? And one of the points he made is in the video is part of what drives that vanilla filmmaking, right? Is the fact that it's like they're catering to the market. The market, they make a movie, the market responds positively, so they make more of that. And then over time, rather than nudging and kind of pushing it more and doing something more cutting edge, they just continue to do the same thing over and over and over, because it's safe, because investors are willing to, oh, well, the last one, that last vanilla flavor did great, so let's do this vanilla flavor, right? And they'll give you money for it, and that's what happened. It becomes this machine, right? And of course, filmmakers are like, yeah, I have to do. It has to be structured this way so that it gets the money, so that it gets produced, so that it, right? I can keep paying bills, and it's understandable, right? But at the same time, it leads to, like we're saying, this sort of vanilla content where, yeah, you can pick out some gems when you look at the whole landscape of faith-based, right, movies and stories. There's some gems where you go, oh, that was, like, you know, but they're kind of few and far in between, I think, because of that model, you know. Um, Rosamund says The Incredibles was the last movie I can remember where the mother had to switch her perspective on things in the plot. Yeah, that's an interesting point. Um,
I don't know what
th-
he's talking about.
oh well, it was kind of like she he was trying to settle into life, and she was willing to accept the boring, nuclear family life, right? So, like the perfect
Oh
scene
yeah, that's
is
true.
when
Yeah,
he comes home after he's been sneaking out saving people, right? Literally sneaking out to save people, and he comes home and she's like, "Is that rubble on your shirt?" Right? It's
yeah, yeah,
hilarious.
yeah.
And like he's been out cheating, right? It's a great scene, right? Because it's like
Yes.
he is kind of cheating, but not in a traditional way, right? And they get in an argument, and then she's like, "Why won't you go to your son's graduation?" He's like, "He's just moving from one grade to the next. Like it's not an actual graduation, right? It's like you're celebrating mediocrity." And he's like, "What's wrong with being really excellent at something? Like what's wrong with being great?" And like he says, "Why don't you let him go for sports?" And she's like, "Well, you know why, right? Because they have this secret, right?" But he's like, he's tired of living this lie, right? He wants to be who
But
he is,
it's funny
and
because at the beginning of the movie, it was okay. Yeah, that's true because it was the opposite. Because when
yeah,
we
well, they were
first,
all out in the open. He was a big hero. Yeah, he loved it, right? He reveled in it.
well, not even
He
just
paid
that, but
for it.
when we're first like when they're interviewing them, Incredibles is the one that wants
Oh
to
yeah,
settle
that's right.
down,
At the beginning,
and
yeah,
Elastigirl's the one that's like, no, I'm
he's
never gonna stop doing this.
yeah. I'm
And
not
then
gonna
when they
settle
get
down. Yeah,
older,
that's right.
it's the exact opposite.
That's exactly right.
So
Yeah,
that yeah,
they both end up selling that, right? And they're like
yeah,
arrogant and kind of cocky, right? Because they're young, right?
yeah.
But it's like you're right. It's like she had to, get to a place where it's like, and this is in this world, right? it was illegal, like for them to actually be heroes. Like, so that's the other layer. And yeah, she had to change her perspective. And part of it, really, they both did, right? Because Mr. Incredible had to realize, you know what, I am a father now, and I'm a husband. I have a responsibility, right? I have an obligation. Like, I want to be this hero, but I do still have to think about, And we saw that play out with when he was captured, and then he heard the recording of his family crash, the plane crashing, right?
Yeah.
And it's like he realized, like, yeah, what am I doing, right? Like, this is what's most important, right? And it took him thinking he lost them, right, to value his family more. So they struck this balance, right? By the end, it was kind of like, okay,
It was also him trying to do everything by himself as well.
yeah, exactly, right, right, because he wanted to protect his, because that's what he is. He's a protector, right?
Yeah.
And it's like so much nuance in that movie, and but yeah, that's a good point, Rosmi, that she had to shift her perspective. In other words, like, she tried to hold back and then realize we can't hold back. We have to. It's like there's still danger in the world, and so if we can do something about it, we should do it. And yeah, um, it's a great movie. I mean, all around, it's actually a really well done story, and it's a rare gem in my opinion. So yeah, and yeah, that's exactly like she had to stop overprotecting the family to let the right, because it was kind of like, and it kind of makes sense, right? Even in reality, we see that with that male female dynamic, there is that tendency, like men are more apt to take risks and even buck the system, especially when we see that it's off the rails, right? Like 2020 is a good example with the lockdowns and everything, and the all the ridiculous stipulations, distancing, and right. And you notice there was a lot of men who were like, "This is dumb," and this, from what I observed, a lot of women kind of just accepted it. They're like, "Oh, I'll wear my mask," and they just went along with it. And a lot of men were kind of like, "I'm not doing this. This is dumb." So and it would be interesting to do a survey to see, you know comparing men to women, how many took the jab and how many didn't, right? How many, I'll be surprised if there's more women that didn't take it versus men. That would be an interesting thing to find out. I'm sure the numbers out there somewhere, but yeah, it's but yeah, it's a good point. She was overprotecting, and Mr. Incredible was sort of underprotecting, at least in the sense of being more involved, right? Being more engaged with the family. But the irony is, once he started doing his hero work, right, he started to be more engaged, right? We saw him playing catch with Dash and all that kind of stuff, and him and his wife getting closer. So it's kind of interesting that because he was able to do hero work, he was able to better engage his family, right? So there's a lesson in that, right? So yeah, very good points. Um, to be fair, the government hero program forced a lot of that onto, yeah, right, exactly. And like I said, it's kind of a reflection of real world dynamics. Like I said, 2020 is a perfect snapshot of that, where you had the government impose these rules, and they were just arbitrary rules, right? And yeah, a lot of people, especially women, I think, kind of, I mean, there were a lot of women that didn't, a lot of, especially a lot of medical professionals who happen to be women, they resisted. But I saw more men doing it, which is great. I think that's kind of how it's supposed to be. But yeah, that's a good point. It was, kind of imposed by the government, and it was understandable, right? So it's not. It was somewhat. She was somewhat sympathetic in that sense, right? It's not like she was a terrible mother, you know. So, but yeah, it's like, but that's a good example of what we're saying. Like, if you're gonna make something faith based, um, you have to decide, like, do you want it to be on the nose, or do you want it to be more subtle? And I think the subtlety is a more compelling way to go. Like what we're doing with Super Galactic, we're trying to, our faith is driving, how we write our story, and the type of things we touch on. But the goal isn't to proselytize, so to speak, right? The goal is to
Well,
tell
it,
you a really cool story, you know.
well,
Um,
it's I would say it's
to-
not just about subtlety, but nuance as well.
yeah,
I
yeah,
mean, uh, I mean, one of the things that um, I guess I could just to speak for myself as a writer when I'm approaching um, the the story of Fantastic Dimension. Um, I mean, I don't. There's not. I wouldn't say there's a whole. I don't know. There hasn't been a whole lot of subtlety in the sense of like not that everything's on the nose, uh, but one of the things because one of the major themes that we talk about a lot is liberty and freedom and things like that.
right,
But freedom is a very nuanced in and of itself is a very nuanced concept because we
right.
want to fight. You know, you want liberty isn't just obviously it's not just
Well, it's not just do what you want.
do what you want, right?
It's
It's
it's it's do what you want within the consequences of reality, right?
we,
Because there's
well, well,
consequences to everything, right? So you're not living without consequences. That's number one.
well, it's
And
like the
two, it's also respecting property rights, starting with yourself, right? And then projecting that onto others, meaning your rights end where my rights begin, right? It's like there's like you said, there's nuance because it's not just willy nilly. I could just run out the street and just kind of do whatever I want, and it doesn't matter who it affects. It's like, well, no, that's freedom without consequences, right? But that's when people talk about freedom or liberty, we're not talking about living without consequences or pretending to live without consequences, right? We're talking about living with responsibility and obligation as an adult, basically, meaning we take responsibility for self, and that involves, what's called the non-aggression principle, right? The Bible, it says, "Do unto others as you would have them do unto you," right? In other words, you're living in such a way where I'm not gonna infringe on the rights of my neighbor with my actions, right? Not intentionally, right? But I'm still free to act. I'm still free to do these things, you know. But the goal is to do them without causing harm, right? So yeah, there's nuance in that, and that's important to understand when promoting liberty and freedom is to understand that like a lot of people for some reason they take it as a blanket. Well, you can't just do whatever you want. It's like, well, no one's at least no one with common sense is arguing for that, is advocating, right? you know
well, right. No, it's like I always think of like a bird in a cage, right? Um, you know, if you keep a bird in a cage, it's gonna be fed or whatever, but its well being is in the hands of somebody else,
yeah,
right?
right,
You let a bird free, it's free to fly right wherever it wants, but it's not free from the weather
yeah, it's
or
not
the
free from danger.
environment.
Yeah,
Yeah, or other bigger animals, right?
right, it's not
So at
protected
that
from.
point,
Yeah,
it's the bird's well-being is essentially in its own hands, right? And
exactly,
that's
yeah,
something that
that's exactly
we
right.
want. That's something at least that we want to portray in as the story progresses, right? With
Exactly,
different
exactly.
characters.
It's that liberty is the responsibility of the individual.
Yeah.
It's and but it doesn't mean that it's a responsibility without accountability, right? Um, and I think that's important, and that is something we'll be touching on in the story as we go forward. Is yes, we want to promote liberty and freedom. We also want to promote godliness, right? Um, but like I said, it's for us, it's not something where we're trying to be ham-fisted. You know, you know? It's like no, we're trying to tell first and foremost, we're trying to tell a compelling story that engages you and pulls you in and won't let you go till it's over, right? So yeah, but that's pretty much the gist of like what I have. You got anything else to add regarding faith-based movies and stories?
I mean, I said it earlier. I mean, you shouldn't. no matter what kind of story you're trying to tell, you shouldn't sacrifice whatever message you want to convey at the sacrifice of an entertaining or compelling story, right?
Right. Yeah.
Because I mean, if you want to, I mean, I've said this before. I mean, if you want to write lectures, then do that. But even
Right.
every
But
most
even a
forms
lecture
of
can be entertaining and
that's
engaging.
the thing. Most forms of communication require good storytelling.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, that's true.
I think people need to be more mindful of that.
Yeah. And
Just
to be honest,
go watch a TED talk. you know.
yeah, I think that's true for the most part. That I think the problem, like the problems we're pointing out on occasion in regards to being ham-fisted, like I said, a lot of that is on purpose, right? It's not incidental, and it's not because the writers lack skill or something. Most of the time, it's because this is what's being, there. It's done purposely. To what end? We can get into a whole thing about like why it's happening. I have my theories, but yeah, it's like a lot of the writers that we've seen, even directors, etc. And I don't just mean the faith base, but I include that though. But even in mainstream Hollywood, that have made bombs, right? They can produce a great movie, right, or a great TV show. Those same, like Leslie Hetland, I think that's her name, right? The showrunner for The Acolyte. She can produce something good, but she chooses not to. Why? Because she chooses to push the message above the story, right? And you understand what I'm saying? Like they can do, you know, good stories. It's just they choose not to. And in their mind, they're not choosing a bad story. They're just choosing to tell quote unquote their story, right? Like that's probably how they would phrase it. I'm telling my story. This is my experience or my truth, or And I think that's all that's happening is it's a matter of competing perspectives, right?
Yeah.
Um, and but if you gave them certain parameters and said, I will pay you $1 million or $20 million or however, and it has to be a great story, right? And these are the parameters. And one of those parameters is, no representation, whatever, however you want to phrase it, right? No LGBTQ representation or something, right? It's like, okay, and they'll write a story that's right, that doesn't put that ahead of the story, right? That doesn't put the message ahead of the story. They'll write a great story, and you'll go, wow, this is actually a good story. It's like, why don't you do this, right, all the time? And it's like, because that's not the agenda, right? That's not the goal, you know. So, and I think that's all it is you know what I mean? It's like it's a choice. It's not an accident, you know. Rasman says, I get nervous when people talk about liberty and the crowd retract. Yeah, it's like, don't you want to be free? But believe it or not, a lot of people don't. Because a lot of it's about perception, right? A lot of people perceive um, freedom in a very different way, right, than the rest of us, right? So a lot of times when people think freedom, they're thinking the worst case scenario. They're thinking anarchy. And what happens is, and part of this is, thanks to the media, they conflate anarchy with liberty, right? And even anarchy isn't, and I should even go deeper. They conflate anarchy itself with chaos, right? Rioting and violence, looting, right? They'll say that's anarchy. That's like, well, no, that isn't anarchy, right?
Yeah.
It's like it's like saying a woman walking down the street naked is freedom, right? It's like, or you say she's not shy, right? It's like, no, that's exhibitionism, right? Like, sure, it's a type of freedom, right? But it's not, it doesn't encompass freedom itself, right? And I think that's the problem is we've been kind of conditioned to conflate violence with anarchy, right? But anarchy simply means without rulers, like without rules. And even saying that doesn't mean that you can do whatever you want without consequences. You understand? Like freedom without consequences is not freedom, right? I don't know what that is. Tyranny, I guess, right? You understand? Like you can't live however you want, and it affects other people negatively, especially. And there's no repercussions, there's no consequences, no accountability. Well, that's not really freedom, is it? You're actually terrorizing other people, right? So that's tyranny. So yeah, it's like, and that's what I'm saying. It's not logical, but that's what happens because we've listened to the media too long, and they tell us that freedom is bad because freedom means anarchy, and it's like, well, no, and anarchy means violence.
Yeah.
Ergo, freedom is violence, right? And it's like, no, that's not how it works. That's not reality, right? In reality, people tend to live in peace with each other, especially if they have a shared experience, a shared culture, right? A shared worldview. We tend to live together just fine, right? Like, sure, there'll be conflicts, and then we figure out ways to resolve those conflicts without violence, right? And because generally speaking, we don't want violence, right? Sure, there's always an anomaly. There's always an exception that's just somebody loves violence, right? But that's not typical, right? Typically, we go out into the world, we're not looking to be violent with someone, right? We're looking to cooperate, or at the least, be left alone, right? So, but yeah, I'm with you on that. It's unfortunate, but I think, at least I hope, that's changing now, where people are become more adept to the idea of being free, and particularly being free from government. And that's another theme that's in Super Galactic as well, is being free from corrupt government, from government itself. And once you get into the story, you'll see, you know, it's not about promoting government either. Um, we don't necessarily demonize government, but we definitely it's going to get its share of criticism. So he says, "Can she? I have no evidence for Headley in relation to whether she can write a good story. I think she can. I think everyone. I think everyone has the ability to do it, and they choose not to. I really believe that. I don't believe that these people went to college and learned how to write and majored in journalism. All this, and they're incapable of writing a good story. I really don't believe that. I think they can, and they just choose not to. And like I said, in their minds, they're not thinking, I'm going to write a garbage story. They're thinking, I'm going to write this type of story that promotes this idea that's relative to my experience, right? But it has nothing to do with the actual target audience, as in the case with Leslie Headland, right? Like, it has nothing to do with the actual audience that wants to see the acolyte, right? But I'm still going to put in my sensibilities and my, perspective, and promote my ideas because you know I think it's important, right? So it's just a selfish endeavor, right? It's a ego trip. It really is. A lot of these things are vanity projects where they're they're jumping in or being tapped to join, for the sake of their own egos, even though they don't care about the source material or the IP or anything, right? It's just, well, it has the eyes on it, right? So I'll be able to put my ideas, and tack it onto this, very popular, famous IP, and the world will see my brilliance. Right? That's kind of, in my opinion, what's driving a lot of it on the lower levels, at least. It's just ego, just straight up, you know. Hey, I'm part of this huge, super huge IP, global, uh, presence and all that, and you know, I'm gonna get to, put my controversial items. They're not that controversial, but I'm gonna put it in this story and shoehorn it in, and I got free reign. There's nothing they can do about it, right? And they don't care about what the audience actually wants, right? It's not about that. So, because that's what they hired me to do. Yeah, and I think that's exactly right. I think, a big part of what's driving it is the upper echelon is hiring people like her to do just that, right? To subvert these traditional tropes, these very, well regarded IPs, and yeah, they know what's going to happen, but they don't care because that's their agenda is something. And I think the word demoralization is what comes to mind. Like that's I really believe that's what they're trying to do, is demoralize people and just make us all despair and lose hope. Like just be cynical. I really believe that's the end goal, is let's just continue to tear down anything that represents what is good, right? And we're just gonna, anything that represents reason, logic, goodness, hope, love, all those things. We're gonna rip it down and replace it with agenda driven DEI woke messaging, right? Um, because they know it's just gonna demoralize people, and people are gonna give up, and they're gonna despair, and they're gonna become cynical, all these different things. So sitting at a keyboard going, no, 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 no.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I mean, in a way, I do believe that. Like I said, I think you know, I think that's what's happening. So yeah, thank you. With that racism online, yeah, um, that's another. You brought this to my attention as well, right?
Oh yeah.
Regarding thanks, Rosman, because that's we need to segue into that, because that's kind of interesting. You wanna
I mean, it was
yeah.
so basically what ended up happening was there was this indie game that was released by this actor. His name was Abu Bakar Salim. Uh, he's uh, he's African, to my understanding. I don't remember which uh, part of actor. He's a British actor, but I'm assuming his parents are from uh, somewhere specific. But he was. I don't know if you ever watched House of Dragon. House of the Dragon.
Yeah, I recognize him. He was in
Okay,
that,
yeah.
and he was in what's the other one? The sci-fi one. It was on HBO Max. Um, man, I can't remember it now.
Is it? I mean, he was in a lot of stuff. He was
Yeah,
in.
yeah,
He was actually in.
he's a great actor. He's actually really good.
Yeah,
Uh,
he was
so,
actually in Legend of Vox Machina. He was one of the voice actors.
right, yeah,
Yeah.
but yeah, he's been in a lot of stuff, and he
But
recently had
yeah,
some
so
issues
he
where
started in 2020. He started his own game development studio called. It was called Silver Rain Games. It was renamed to Surgent Studios.
yeah,
Um, you know, he's his debut project was called Tales of
Ken
Kenzera.
Sarah, yeah, that's what's on the screen there. Yeah,
Yeah, and I haven't played the game yet. I mean, it got average reviews. It
yeah,
seems
I
to be
think yeah, it, it didn't bomb, right? It did
I,
okay. It wasn't like
yeah, but I think what the at least the how the story goes is that they didn't make enough money. It didn't make enough money for him to keep uh, the staff on his team, so he had to let go most of his team because it didn't make enough money back.
yeah, yeah. I
And
mean, as is the case with a lot of things, right? Especially in
yeah,
the creative space. So not very unusual.
yeah. So I think the the issue though that a lot of people had is mainly it's the way he advertises the game. You know, he puts a lot of emphasis. Like whenever he mentions the game, he always talks about, "Hey, this was made in honor of my dead father, who told me video games." Which at first, like, okay, that's cool, but then like he keeps bringing up his dead father.
Yeah,
That's
yeah.
like,
Like in a
uh,
way it's clear he's attempting to leverage that to market the game, right? To as a marketing
Well,
tool.
yeah, it's like I mean,
That's the impression.
you don't have to guilt trip me into playing your game, dude. Just
Yeah,
you know,
yeah, and that's I think that's some of the criticism he's gotten,
yeah,
kind of laying that in a little too thick, right?
yeah.
Um, but apparently there were some comments. Now, what I need to understand is, were the comments in relation to that specifically, or was it in relation to his game overall? Because
It
there was
was
some obviously some offensive. I would say, yeah,
it
definitely
was in relation
racial,
to because
racially.
he put out a video where he was like to the we put out uh he put out this video talking about like oh people are saying that everything was handed to me because I was black and I
Yeah, I
disagree
saw
and
that. Yeah, he posted it on Twitter, I think, and
yeah.
YouTube, right? Yeah,
Yeah, and he's like, he talks about how people aren't buying this game, and there was a particular podcast that saw it, and they started. I mean, they started saying a lot of racist. I mean, stuff. I mean, the main thing also I forgot to mention was he lost a lot of support when he found out that he had started working with Sweet Baby Inc. For those of you who don't know, Sweet Baby
yes,
Inc.
that's right.
is
Yeah,
a
well, we talked about them last week, right?
yeah,
Yeah, the DEI champions of game.
the consulting company. Yeah.
Yeah,
Um, so he lost a lot of support because of that,
right.
and this particular podcast, um, some of the members on the podcast uh, made some racist jokes and things like that. The first one I where I went to watch it was one of them said it was like, oh, more like it should have been called Spear Checker Studios, or whatever. And that was kind of, you know,
Yeah,
that
yeah.
was.
That's yeah.
I mean, there's no real. I can't this
I mean,
defending that.
yeah,
And
it's definitely
then later on in another in a follow up podcast, he's literally talking about, oh, we were, taking down a darkie, and it's like, why, dude? Like, what the heck?
yeah. No, he
No,
was he said we were talking about uh, making fun of a no, we were baking a brownie or something like he said something like that.
no,
Yeah.
it was I. There was that, but he also said in
Oh,
that
he said
same
something else. Okay.
in that
Okay.
same pod, it was a different clip. He was talking about taking down a.
Okay.
He calls him a darkie, and it's like,
Yeah, yeah. No, I mean saying either term. It's kind of like look, you know, how do I put this? Number one, I I don't know. It's not about me, so I don't know what his sensibilities are. Um, you know,
are you talking about the Mr.
I'm talking about
Salim or the dude?
yeah, Mr. Salim.
Okay,
But I'm kind of like, bro, it's people are people can be jerks, right? Um, and they make off-color jokes. Why? Well, they get attention, right? They get clicks and views. They it's salacious, and unfortunately, people like salacious content. So if you're saying these terms that come off as
oh, I think you cut off.
right, can you hear me now?
Yeah,
Okay, sorry about that. But like it's kind of like the question is, does it warrant a response? Like, how many people are actually doing this? Right? Is it this podcast, some idiot on a podcast,
so
or
here's the
is
thing
it
though.
thousands
This
of people, you know, commenting and saying these things?
So
Right?
here's the thing though. The video that Salim put out isn't in response to the podcast. He actually addresses them on Twitter. And to be fair, he's pretty. I mean, based
Yeah,
off of what I've read so far, he's pretty civilized about it. Like he doesn't like.
yeah, yeah. His tweets
Uh,
are. He's been pretty. Yeah,
yeah. So I mean, either way. I feel like whether regardless if it was intended, if he's racist real life or not, it was still a dumb thing to say. And I say that only because you could be. I feel like you could be critical of somebody's work without having to uh, uh, you know reduce yourself to
To
just insulting
racial
things.
epithet. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah,
because
I agree. I mean,
because it's
but that's what I'm
mainly
saying. It's they know this, right? They're not stupid, right? They know this, but they do it for the virility, right? They know it's going to go viral. They know it's going to get people mad, and so they do it anyway. And part of it is, don't give them that power, so to speak, right? By acknowledging that. But two, it's I think he's handled it quite well. And I think for him, my impression from his video was that he's more or less just irritated or frustrated at the notion that his accomplishments are simply because he's black, right? Um, and that's understandable,
yeah.
and that's something we mentioned before, in that that's the consequences of forced diversity, right? Forced equity, forced inclusion, where it's very ham-fisted, it's inauthentic, and you're playing to a very small audience doing that, right? The DEI stuff, the Sweet Baby Ink stuff, and what happens is you create a perception, right? It's just like affirmative action, right? If people believe you're hired because you're black, then they're going to correlate that with, well, that means you weren't really qualified, right? It's just because you're black, just because you're a woman, right? And that's problematic, obviously, because I would hope, my doctor isn't there just because he's black, but because he's a good doctor, right? He's
Yeah.
competent. And it's the same with Mr. Salim. It's like, I've seen his performance. I think he's a great actor. So that kind of goes without question to say, well, look, he is a good actor. Like, he has a great presence, and all that, the parts he's played and everything. But it's like, but that's the sad consequence too, is that people, like, the podcaster represented it's an extreme, right? And purposely so. But in among the general, populace, general audience, right? There's going to be some that are going to look at it and go, yeah, maybe it's this diversity thing, and it's not because he's talented, right? And that's unfortunate. It's a sad. Um, I don't know. I wouldn't say unintended consequence. I think for some it's unintended, right? But like I said before, I think for many in the upper echelon, it's their very intent is to, like I said, demoralize us, right? To make us cynical, and to look at when we see a genuinely talented person who happens to be black or a woman, or or even a LGBTQ or something, to automatically say, "Oh, that's DEI," right? And it's unfortunate because it's a disservice to them when they've put in the work, right? They've put in the time, and it's paid off for them. But now it's clouded, just like I said, just like with affirmative action, right? When that was the thing, especially when it came to college admissions, that was the thing in I think it was the 80s and 90s, right? And they did eventually eliminate that. And but it's like, yeah, you're gonna always have that cloud of, are you this, special uh, handout person, or are you someone who earned where they are, right? Um, it makes a difference, and sometimes for some people, perception is reality, right? And like you said, tell you, in my opinion, once you see his work, you've seen the parts he's played. It's like, oh yeah, this guy's a good actor. Like, so of course he was hired because he's good, not because he's black, right? Now,
Yeah.
granted, there's parts where it calls for a black person, right? Because of the nature of the story. That's fine, but I would hope that he's being hired and he's getting work because he's good, right? And yeah, but I think that may be the issue with the success of his game or the lack thereof. It could be that once again it's being perceived as DEI, right? Because it is for prominently African American or Afrocentric, right? And once again, that's it sucks, because it looks like it's a cool idea and it's interesting, um, you know, wholly original, right? So it's really messed up, and it really annoys me too because, um, and what annoys me more are the people that defend DEI, right? Um, Especially, it's like you can't have it both ways. You can't say I worked hard, I worked twice as hard as any white person or something, or any man to get here, while at the same time calling for literally forced integration, like forced, like you just need to put a woman there, or you just need to put a black man or black woman there because representation. And it's like, well, look, do you want to earn it or not earn it, right? You, you, you can't have it both. You can't have it handed to you, but then claim that you earned it, right? It doesn't work that way. And so if it's handed to you, at least the perception is that it's handed to you. Yeah, those are the consequences. The people aren't going to take you as seriously. They're not going to really respect you in the same manner that someone who actually worked there, and you see the work, you see the work product, right? Like no one will say Denzel Washington is a DEI hire. Why? Because he was around before all that. Number one, right? And he has a body of work that tells you otherwise. That no, this guy is just incredibly talented, right? And that's true for a lot of black actors and actresses, right? Um, and that's what I'm saying. But those coming up, those who are finally hitting the mainstream, right? In the midst of this DEI stuff, they're gonna have that dark cloud of, well, are you here? Are you really talented, or are you just here because you have the right skin color, or you're the right sex, or right, or you claim the right pronoun? Right? I mean, it's really messed up, So yeah, that's my 2 cents. It's like I can understand his frustration from his video. It's like, yeah, I get it, man. Like that would piss me off too if I know I really worked my butt off to get where I am. Especially mentioning his father and everything. They were close, and like the game and everything inspired by that. It's like,
Yeah.
and then to be told, "No, this is some DI nonsense," right? It's like, bro, like that's not even close. But it's sometimes things just get muddy because of that. You know, um, yeah, it's frustrating. So
I mean, it doesn't. I mean, hopefully, because based off of what I've seen on the Twitter, there's other projects, game projects he's working on. So hopefully, he's able to pick himself back up and whatnot.
yeah, I mean, look, regardless of the you know, supposed flop or whatever or lack of success, you just keep pushing, and maybe it's a matter of, going back and revamping the game a little bit, or maybe promoting it differently, right? Maybe getting other people involved that can help promote it, stuff like that. Like, um, that could make a difference, right? Maybe he just comes back next year and just, reboot, so to speak. Rosman says, "Is it that people think it's his first project because they never heard of him?" And it's like, yeah, that could be it too, right? It could be just a matter of, you know, it's your first game, it's your first ever thing, like independent solo, right? So yeah, that could just be it, and hopefully that is it, right? It's just, all right, never heard of this, well, maybe I give it a shot later or something, right? Like, a lot of, like, some people are going to say, I'm going to wait and see what others say before I invest, right? Like, that happens. That's just the natural consequence of the market. So, and maybe that's the key. Maybe he needs to get some beta players to come in and play it and give some reviews and that kind of stuff. I don't know if he did that, but maybe that could be a solution. But yeah, that could, hopefully it is that simple, right? Um, I think he's unfairly targeted for the soft, sweet baby affiliation. Yeah, I think so, and that's what I'm saying. It's like, and maybe that's something. that falls on him as as the lead, right? It's like that's probably something he should have considered, but at the same time, you know, the whole Sweet Baby Inc. philosophy and DEI stuff is probably something he agrees with. And that's the sad irony of it. It's like he probably agrees with it. Therefore, yeah, I'll associate with them. But it's like you got to read the room. It's probably not a good idea, right? Um, Especially now. Maybe 10 years ago it would have been fine, but right now, right? A lot of people are, especially in the gaming industry, they're not going for it. They're like, we want good games. Like we want games that are fun, that are engaging, and you get way more immediate feedback, right? And the game, and there's a lot of. It's not like movies where, I mean, similar, I guess. You can always go back and watch old movies, but most people, they don't necessarily want to do that. They want to be able to do both, right? With gamers, though, a gamer will go back, to their old PS2 or something, and they'll be fine, right? They don't, you know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
they're gonna buy a game when they know like that's gonna be a great game, like that's gonna be a slamming game. I'm gonna get it. But if they hear that it's garbage, they're not gonna, it's I got plenty of games to play. I don't need your game, right? I have games. I have hundreds of games. Like, and I don't have a problem going back and replaying those games and rebeating those games, or, it's like because games are meant to be played and to be fun. So it's something I can do over and over again. Um, so that's kind of the catch 22 in the gaming space, right? It's like gamers. I think out of all the other, maybe with the exception of like books and comics, they have way more choices. And they don't have to buy a game. Like it's not something like they have to invest in. So does a Sweet Baby, let's say, cajole people to use? Oh, I don't know. That's a good point. I mean, they probably do. This is what I believe they do, and it's as old as I am. It's something that Jesse Jackson and Al Sharpton were very good at, and I think they probably perfected it. And that's they do this whole hustle where they'll go to a company. Well, first, what they'll do is they'll go to a company and say, "Hey, you don't have enough black representation on your board of directors, or on the lower level, maybe in your management or something." Right? They'll start there, and they'll keep kind of pushing that, and then the company will be like, "Look, go away, man. Like, leave us alone." Right? So then what he does is he'll go, "Okay, then I'm going to leak it to the press," and he's already got like 100 people with picket signs ready to go. Then they're going to go in, and he's going to already have certain people picked out in your company that's going to give him the inside scoop, right, on things. And he'll say, "Well, I got several employees who've complained about racism or something, or know, in your company. What are you going to do about it?" And he goes to the press, and all of a sudden, Budweiser is racist, or name your company, right? Nike, whatever. And there's people outside the corporate headquarters, and right then lo and behold, they've appointed some black person, usually Jesse Jackson himself or one of his cronies, to the board, to the board of Nike or Budweiser or whatever other company, and
I'm, I'm pretty sure they admitted to doing something very similar. At least
so,
the
well, that's what I'm
CEO.
saying. That's probably what's happening with Sweet Baby and other companies like them is, and the beauty is they have social media, right? So it can happen a lot faster than with Jesse Jackson. You're talking about maybe months to years of like, you know, uh, pushing and sending letters and all that kind of stuff, going on TV and interviews. Where with Sweet Baby, they could just send a tweet. What I mean?
Yeah,
They just put out a tweet and post on Facebook and whatever TikTok video, and all of a sudden people are like, "What? This company's racist? What? Right?" And then it's, "Hey, look, you don't want the people to say you're racist, or you don't, and you should hire us to be consultants, and we'll tell you what to do and what you should put in your game, and blah blah blah." And then, the executives, many of them are stupid. They'll say, "Okay, we don't want to lose, stock value and blah, blah, blah." And they'll agree to it. And then lo and behold, you got Sweet Baby Inc. and they got their hands in the cookie jar, right? And they're making millions of dollars to basically destroy video games. And that's what's been happening in Hollywood and everywhere else in the comic book industry. They're you're what is it? You're literally paying a thief to rob you, right? You're paying a thief to rob you. So, and that's it. It's So yeah, the short of it is, yeah, they're cajoling. I mean, cajole is putting it nicely, right?
Oh,
you know, uh, I think they're literally blackmailing these companies. Some of these companies. I think there are also people within the companies that are acting as operatives, so to speak, because they agree with it, right? They're in agreement, so they're reaching out to Sweet Baby Inc. and they're convincing their higher ups and etc. Right? So it's quite intricate. It's not just the blackmail, right? That's just one part of it, you know. But yeah, it's really messed up. It's been going on, you know. I mean, that's what Black Lives Matter was all about, really, was laundering, just basically just laundering money, just getting people to give them money so they can fund their lifestyle, right? And buy mansions and cars. And,
yeah.
it had nothing to do with helping black people, right? And sadly, that's the case with a lot of this stuff. So, you Rosmain says racial jokes aside are for personal kicks on the internet. They can't give high fives for it in real life. Yeah, yeah, it's
I mean, yeah, they're doing it for attention. I mean, that
yeah,
doesn't
that's
make
what
it
I'm saying.
better.
It's just to be salacious. It's not to incite viewers and get them to respond, because it's like any attention is good attention, right? What do they say? Any press is good press, right? Like that's kind of how it's become on social media, especially with YouTube and podcasters. Some of these guys are coming up and they get a good following, so they try to keep it going by just digging in deep with the drama, and so they have to create the drama sometimes. And they'll say, "Oh, that's just who I am." It's like, yeah, but that's not who you are in real life. Because
Yeah,
if you were save maybe actual friends that know you, you're not gonna go somewhere like in a black church or a black barbershop and make those jokes and think you're gonna walk out unscathed, right?
yeah, no,
Right? It's like you're not gonna do that, you know. And unless you do it a certain way where they don't take you seriously in the first place, but chances are you're probably not, right? You're safe online to make comments like that, because and you do it in jest, and that's fine. I mean, look, it's a
well, I
it's a
mean, what is
free,
that thing
free
Mike
speech.
Tyson once said? Social media made y'all way too comfortable with disrespecting people and not getting punched in the face for it.
Yeah, that's exactly right.
So, I mean, that's really all that boils
Yeah,
down to.
that's a
Because
very
listen, I'm at work. I I make fun of my coworkers. My coworkers making fun of me. We
yeah.
say a lot of racist, but we built a rapport, so it's a lot different than
Right,
me.
exactly. But see, that's the problem, though, right? The podcasters will say the same, right? And that's the one I sent you, the other video where this guy is responding
Right,
to.
but you have no
But
rapport with the dude that you're making
yeah,
fun
that's
of.
what I was gonna say. Like they're
So
all well. See, I think he
it's
thinks
dumb.
because he's Hispanic, apparently he's Latino.
That's not.
And I'm like, okay. I mean, I get his point. Like he's saying, look, we make fun of everybody. You don't say anything until it's a black person. Like we talk about Mexican people, talk about, I'm Mexican. And I'm like, okay. I mean, that's a fair point. Like no one gets mad when someone makes fun of Asians, right? No one gets mad when someone makes fun of white women or something, right? But when you say something about black people, all hell breaks loose. And it's like, well, there's some truth to that, sure. There's a hypersensitivity for sure. But at the same time, right? What do they say? Don't poke the hornet's nest, right? It's you know what I mean. Like it's one thing to criticize, another thing to flat out, insult and use racially charged language, right? It's like you pull the tail, you get the horns, right? Like, and that's all I'm saying. It's like, yeah, if you had a couple of or a few black people on your panel that you're like, we're buds, we hang out and we do jokes like this, and you're going back and forth. That's different, right? Because now you're like, well, they're all buddies and friends, and this is their thing, whatever, right? But it's just you, on a panel with other yous, right? it's not a good look, period. And you got to exercise some tact. Like I don't take you seriously. I'm like, whatever. Like you're literally on YouTube. I don't, like I don't have to watch your channel. So, like I can click away. But yeah, it's like it's to be salacious and get the attention, and it's like fine. You got your attention, you got your clicks, right? Um, In my opinion, white dudes with YouTube channels who have never heard of you will try to run your project into the ground just for fun. You got to keep propping it back up. Yeah,
I
yeah,
mean,
I
some
agree.
things aren't worth your attention.
Yeah, and part of that too is at least with the in the sense of Mr. Salim. Um, Also know your market. Know you know you do have to, and listen, the market for gamers and a lot of other content tends to be majority white male, right? That's just facts, you know. And unless you're going for like like a niche, type of demographic, that's fine if that's your goal. But if you're trying to get a general audience, then you probably want to play into those sensibilities. And I'm not talking about what some would call sellout or something. I don't even know what that would mean, but I just mean like play to those sensibilities. And that means, like I said, read the room and associating with the likes of a Sweet Baby Inc. Even in the most slightest way, I think probably it did bode bad for him. You know what I mean? Like it probably didn't help with this game sales because I guess it's there's a cloud. Like people, oh, here we go again, right? And they're just a lot of people just gonna pass, and not just white dudes. I mean, a lot of people, black, white, Mexican, a lot of people are really tired of it because it's just so forced and it's patronizing. It's insulting many times, especially with now in his case, I don't think that's what his game is. His game looks like an original idea and it looks cool and it's based on a lot of cool stuff. But like I said, for some people, perception is reality. Uh, so and like I said, associating with a DEI company like Sweet Baby Inc. It's just not a good idea. You know, I think right now, especially in the gaming space, in any space, to be honest, especially if you're independent, it's just not a good idea. And I think if he did, you know, declare an association somehow, or allow that to be, you know, made known or whatever. Yeah, that probably didn't help. You know,
Yeah.
so, but yeah, so you see it every day online. Yeah, yeah. I mean, I see a lot of it. Um, you know, in the comic space in particular. But it seems like it is everywhere. It's you know people just, but like it's just to get those clicks, right? It's part
Well,
of it's ego. The other part of it is it gets you clicks.
okay.
It gets
I would say it's not. I mean, it's not just a race. I mean, we live in a day and age where people are so desperate to become viral, where they'll literally harass people. Like that's literally a market on like Twitch and stuff like that, where it's just Twitch streamers that go out to other countries and they like harass people for views and stuff like that.
you. Yeah,
Like there's
yeah,
recently,
right. Yeah, I forgot his name.
so recently there was like a
Yeah,
streamer named Johnny Somali.
yeah, that's it,
He
Johnson.
he got kicked out of Japan,
Yeah, I
and now
remember.
he's in Korea, and now he's going to prison in Korea, right?
Yeah,
All
I heard about
because
that. Yeah,
and it's he's so desperate that he's hanging out with this guy who actively calls him the N word, and like this Korean dude, and it's so baffling to me that he's willing to just surround himself with that people that hate him just for clout, and it's really irritating because I mean for a lot of reasons. It's just it's I mean it's moral depravity because it's not just him. There was another streamer. She like pushed this lady into the she like told this lady to jump in the water, and like she started drowning, and then didn't help her, and she's
Oh
still
yeah,
screaming.
yeah, I heard about that.
Yeah,
Yeah,
it was
so
awful.
listen, there's some sick people out there. And they, and the internet, kind of emboldens them a little bit, right? But to do stupid things,
Yeah,
and yeah, but it's, I don't know. We can sit here all day and complain. People are going to be people. I think the best remedy is to ignore those people until they do something that causes harm, right? And let the reality of life hit them. Like this Johnny Somali is like, look, you're gonna go to jail because you're harassing people
yeah.
and making commotion
And
in
like
a
he's not in
country that's not
Japan
yours.
anymore. He's in Korea.
Yeah, that's what I mean. So, yeah,
And
I
the
don't feel
north,
sorry
the
for him.
more north he goes, the more likely he's gonna end up
It's just
getting
gonna get
himself
worse.
killed.
Yeah, yeah. So Mirage Act, should one not do a job somewhere that has a DI department? I know. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I would say, yeah, do the job. If if you got to work, but in Mr. Salim's case, um, I don't think it was necessary. If he did in fact work with them, I don't think it was. It's his company, so he can do whatever he wants with his company. But my critique is read the room and say, you know what, maybe I'll keep my distance for now or something, right? And truth be told, they're not needed. It's a lot of companies are getting rid of these departments, those like DI, equity, whatever the role, all these weird positions. They're getting rid of them because they realize they're not making them any money. And they don't. All it does, like I said, you're paying a thief to rob you. That they're kind of pointless. But yeah, that's a tough one. Like I work, at a company that has it, so I understand. It's like, thankfully it's not as bad as some other places, but yeah, it's there, and you just, you got to deal with it. So, want to make a living, so you find something better, of course. It doesn't help that most people in these arenas aren't thinking critically, just criticizing. Yeah, yeah, right. Because they're not there to give you a thoughtful examination of something, right? They're there to just get you excited and exciting and click here, click there, buy our merch, and that just gets you riled up, and and it gets them an audience, right? Because it plays into certain sensibilities, and and there's a lot of it's a lot deeper than that too, especially when you get into the area of racism and the racist commentary. Um, a lot of that is driven by the current culture of DEI, right? It's sort of a backlash, right? What's I think Ron Paul coined it blowback in reference to the government, right? Going overseas all the time and starting these wars, and that creates terrorists, right? Who then turn around and attack us. And I think that's sort of what's happening on a smaller scale with the forced diversity. Um, I think there's we're seeing more backlash, and unfortunately, some of is critical, right? Some of it is intelligent, but
A
also,
lot of it's not.
yeah, some of it is terrible, right?
Yeah,
And you got to take the good with the bad. You got to eat the meat, spit out the bones, right?
just use good judgment, really.
Yeah, yeah. But I'm just saying, like, even in the midst of these some of these podcasters, it is helpful to at least hear their points, right? To go, okay, what are they saying? And I'm not talking about the guy that was using slurs or whatever. I just
No,
mean
just in
the other
general,
guy
yeah.
that was, he was giving an argument, and it's like, yeah, I see what he's saying, right? And he had some points, because he was sort of, I mean, the problem is you're still defending someone who's being, intentionally racist, right? And now, like I said, there's nuance, right? Like if Dave Chappelle tells a joke about white people, is he being racist? It's like, well, yes and no, right? You understand? It's like he's telling a joke, but his joke more likely will reduce. racism versus create more. Why? Because generally speaking, when a comedian like Dave Chappelle or Chris Rock or somebody makes a joke about white people, right? There, it does something that kind of brings us together. It allows us to laugh at ourselves, right? Because in that same set, they'll make a joke about black people. You understand? And it's the same. There's been white comedians, right, like Bill Burr or some, that'll make jokes about black people, right? But his jokes aren't inciting us and making us angry at black people,
Mm.
right? His jokes are making us laugh at ourselves and see ourselves as human, right? So there's a nuance, right? And that's the problem with these guys online who make these jokes, but the nuance is lost, right? Because they're not comedians and they're not very good at doing what they're doing. They're just good at making people mad, right? They're either making you laugh because you're already a subscriber and you're already a fan, right? Or they're making you mad
Yeah.
because you haven't heard the full breadth of their content, right? You've only heard that one soundbite or that one clip. You get it? So you're forming a judgment. And that was the argument this guy was making was the context of it. It's like, yeah, we call him out on it and this and that. It's like, well, okay, but none of that matters because most of the people that hear the clips or the soundbite aren't watching your 2 3 hour podcast, right? They're
No.
probably not even subscribers.
No.
So you can't argue context when no one's hears the context. See, but a Dave Chappelle could argue context. Why? Because Dave Chappelle is a freaking comedian who's very famous, and a lot of people have seen his work. Right? He has a
Yeah.
body of work, so no one can say he's this or that, right? Without getting some backlash from his fans saying no, he isn't. Right? You
Right.
understand? Because we've seen the context of his work. Right? Same with Chris Rock. Same with Bill Burr. It's like there's a context and a nuance that we've all experienced that allows us to accept that racist joke, right? And go, yeah, but we know he's not really racist like that, right? He's not being hateful or spiteful. He's just telling a joke that allows us to see ourselves as humans, right? See each other as human, right? And we can laugh at ourselves. But in the context of these podcasters, that opportunity isn't there because they're reduced to sound bites and they know they are. That's the problem. They know they're going to be versus presenting themselves in a manner that creates the context for us, right? That allows us to go, oh, okay, he's making these jokes, but there's a context to it. We understand what he means and why he's saying it, and even that's, that's limited, right?
Yeah.
It's not for every comment, whatever, but you know, it's like at least be, like you said, be critical, right? Think critically. And that's the problem. They're not. They're just, acting on their emotions and because they're like, oh, I got to get clicks and views, and that's kind of all that is.
Right.
It's unfortunate. Um, so, to be honest, I don't think too many people want to play African tribal warriors. Well, I don't know. I'll put it this way: a lot of people didn't know they wanted an iPhone until it was made. Right? A lot of people didn't know they wanted an iPad until it was there. Right? Like a lot of times, you don't know what people are going to really respond to until you
It's
present it.
it's really all
So,
about optics
yeah,
and
yeah, I think so
marketing.
because I think people would play the heck out of it if they saw that, oh, the gameplay's dope, graphics are nice. Okay, it's African theme. Okay, what part of Africa? Oh, this part of Africa. Or what tribe? Oh, the Zulu, like Zulu tribe. Like, oh man, like if someone made a Zulu warrior game, I don't know if there is one, but if someone did, I would imagine it would probably do great because that's a more well known aspect of African culture, right?
Yeah.
So there's a movie and all this stuff, documentaries about Zulu, soccer Zulu, and all that. So that would be probably interesting to explore that and see. I think there would be, generally speaking, a positive response if it's presented in a positive way. If it's presented in a way that's you're playing into the sensibilities of a general audience that is predominantly white male, right? I mean, that's just reality, you know. And I don't think it means you have to somehow compromise anything. It just means how about you don't beat them over the head and tell them they're racist. I don't know. I'm just saying, right? Maybe you don't tell your general audience that they're all sexist and racist and misogynist. Maybe you just tell them, hey, you guys, you love playing fun games. Here's a fun game. It has everything you want in the game. and I hope you like it. And there you go. Right? Maybe that would work. I don't know. Right. So I'm just saying. But so I don't know. I kind of disagree. I think people would. It's just it's presentation. I mean, Black Panther did over $1 billion,
Yeah.
and that wasn't all black people watching
Also, I think it's important. There was a time period, especially in the '90s, where a lot of people, well, companies didn't think Japanese stuff would do well in the states. Like, oh, this is too Japanese, right? Like that's why, like, you remember Mystical Ninja, right, on the N64.
it. Barely.
Oh. The Goemon's Great Adventure.
I know. Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
Okay, yeah. So we only got that one game. There were two games made for the N64. One was, and then before that, there was like 10 different other Goemon games on like in Japan that we didn't get to see in America.
Right.
Right? There was like four other Super Nintendo games that are Japan only. Three different PlayStation games that are Japanese only that didn't get translated until recently, right?
Yeah. Right.
But it's like, you know because they thought, oh, well, nobody wants to play as this obscure Japanese folklore character, right? So
Right.
I think like I said, it's really about optics and marketing, right?
Yeah, that's what's called localization, right?
Yeah,
It's like if you create a game that has a very strong cultural base to it, like African and specifically Nigerian or something, right? And then you say I want to port this to Canada, you know what I mean, or America. Well, then you have to go in and say, okay, well, let's change certain terminology. Maybe we can add some different color schemes to the background. You understand? Like you do something called localization to adapt it to the sensibilities of a different market, right? And so that's just business. That's just how things are, because you get a better response, right? Um, and and so like you said, it's like yeah, playing a game as a tribal African tribal warrior. Like, why not? It's a warrior, right? If he's really cool and awesome and kind of badass or whatever, why not? People play as Greek gods, right? And people, I mean, guys play as females, for crying out loud, right? Why would they have a problem playing as a black guy, an African guy, right? It's I don't think generally it's they would if it's like I said, if it's presented and marketed properly. So you
yeah.
said I meant Sweet Baby asking individuals or indies to bring them on. Are you speaking in terms of um, what am I trying to say? Um, Playing African based games, or are you talking about them partnering with these companies? I guess you mean partnering with the companies, right? Um, yeah. Okay, you have to, if you're still here, give us elaborate on that one. Rosemary, thanks.
Well, I think it's talking about encouraging indie developers to work with the company to quote unquote improve their game or whatever.
Well, yeah, yeah. Well,
Yeah,
yeah. I
yeah,
think they
partnering
are.
with small companies.
Yeah, and that's the thing. I wonder. I kind of wonder what the arrangement would be. Like, are they offering funds? That's another thing too, right? And I think that's probably a big part of it is
That probably is a big part of it.
they're acting as an aggregator or a go between the company and like investment firms that are specifically looking to fund DEI specific projects, right? So that's like I said, it's deep, right? It's not so cut and dry. Excuse me, cut and dry. So it's like they're not going and saying, "Hey, you should race swap your characters, or you should have some type of representation," and then the game company goes, "Okay," right? It's like No, they're like I said, they're using um, blackmail tactics, right? Pressuring them with, look what's happening, what's trending on social media, and look at this, and we don't want it to get out that you're not inclusive, right? And then they're also dangling the carrot of money, right? They say, hey, we can help you tap into some funding. Like we have special partnerships with these investment firms, and they're looking for projects that have these specific things. So if you include these specific things in your project, you'll get the funding, right, that you need, right, et cetera, et cetera. I think you know that's kind of how it's going, But yeah, I see what you mean. Yeah, uh, if you can make fun of certain people and they don't care, stick with them. Don't try to spread it around to strangers. Yeah, yeah, I agree. You have your circle of friends. That's fine. You know, you know what I mean. Like it is what it is, right? Um, but yeah, you don't think that you can take those same uh, uh, sort of conversations public, and the public will receive it the exact same way as your friend group or your clique, right? That's quite naive. But like I said, I think these guys know better, and you know they're just trying to get the attention. So what was this? Find an indie guy and tag along with them to a corporate distributor. Ah, that's an interesting point. Yeah, yeah, yeah. He says like a seduction. Yeah, yeah. I mean, that's an interesting point. Yeah. So it's like, are you still there? Oh yeah, I think we lost Jerry Jr. Yeah. Oh. Oh, there you are.
Yeah, so my internet cut out now.
Yeah, that's happened earlier.
That's hilarious.
Our internet went down. It went down yesterday too. So it's like a lot going on. Apparently, there's this whole traffic apocalypse happening because there's like events at all the major venues in Southern California, like in SoFi Stadium and the Coliseum and the Galaxy Stadium, and you go on every major venue, Inglewood at the Forum and not Staples, Crypto.com now. So downtown. So there's going to be, and then there's the Dodgers are playing, right? So it's like, but they're in New York, but there's going to be a lot of activity around that. So it's like, yeah, this whole weekend, I'm basically staying home. I'm not leaving because I don't want to get going out in that traffic. So,
Yeah.
uh, so
Just a heads up, it is 12:43.
yeah, we went way over today. But thanks for joining us. Thanks for hanging out. Thanks, Rosmain, for hanging with us again. We appreciate you all the time, man. Um, yeah, small company fight it. Yeah, yeah, a true indie company. Yeah, and that's a good point. Being small and you start dangling that carrot. You know, yeah, I can get. You know, I can see why they would cooperate, right? And I think that's true for even for larger companies as well. So, but yeah, so we're gonna call it a day and say thank you for joining us once again. Thanks for tuning in. We really appreciate it. We thank you for your support. We thank you for your participation. Please like and share. And if you're watching the recording, thank you for watching. Please check out our campaign, which is going on right now on fundmycomic.com. Super Galactic Fantastic Dimension Alpha Child Origins #1. Check it out. Go grab some merch. And support us any way you can. There's a lot of options there for you, from $5 just to say that attaboy. We'll say thank you for that. 15 for digital, and then of course the books are 25. So and then there's bundles and everything on up from that, t-shirts, a lot of good stuff. So please check it out, and if you can see fit to support us, it's very much appreciated. We try to get this thing going off the ground, and it starts with this first book, and we'll go from there. So thank you very much once again. Thanks for tuning in, and we'll see you next time. Have a super galactic, fantastic day.
We'll see you around.